Welcome to the Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. And now your host, George Roberts.
Welcome back, entrepreneurs. Today we have William Hollis, founder of 24 Capital Group. Welcome to the show, Hollis.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to start by giving you an opportunity to tell us a little bit of the story of William Hollis.
Yeah, sure. So I'll take you way back into the 90s here. 7-year-old Hollis. I'm actually from Hollis, Queens, which is why everybody just calls me Hollis. My school was on Hollis Avenue. My house was 2 blocks from Hollis Avenue. So when I showed up to school with the last name Hollis, needless to say, it stuck. So yeah, man, when I was a kid, we grew up in Hollis, Queens. We rented our house, and I have a very vivid memory. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old, and it's, first of the month, the landlord, his name was Mr. Carter. He'd come around to collect the rent, and this is the 90s, everything's in cash, and he's stuffing hundreds of dollars into his wallet. I'm talking about this wallet was so full that it didn't fold. He had this Ford Taurus with the cloth seats, and when he went to sit down, the seats would buckle under his. There's so much money in that wallet. I remember thinking as a kid, wow, I don't know how he's done it or what he did to be able to own, because he owned, various houses in the neighborhood. But I just remember thinking, I need to figure out a way to do that. Real estate is the way that he's making all of this money by, being a landlord and owning property. But, the neighborhood at the time, even my mindset at the time, growing up through the years, it just seemed like something that'd be impossible to do. I'm not sure how familiar folks are with real estate in New York, but no surprise, it's pretty expensive. So even thinking
you got a housing shortage out there, huh?
Oh yeah, big time, big time. I mean, there's nowhere else to go but up, right? There's no more land to build on. So, looking at trying to acquire a property, it really just seemed impossible all the way up until I left New York and I came back to the East Coast, and a buddy of mine in 2018 actually took me to a real estate meetup. He and I got to talk, and we figured out we were both interested in real estate. He invited me to the event, and the topic that they were talking about that night was actually wholesaling real estate. And I'm not sure how familiar folks are with that, but essentially it's being a deal finder. You go out and you actually find properties for other investors to purchase, and you kind of are able to be compensated for that. So despite what folks may tell you, it is not a no money invested situation. It does take some money to wholesale real estate. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But I was able to do that. I was able to start wholesaling real estate, and I thought to myself, wow, finally I'm able to get into the the industry that I've wanted to. The barrier to entry has been removed somewhat. But after a couple of years of that, I quickly found out that there's no passive aspect to it. The moment I stopped making these phone calls, the money stops coming in. And really what I was looking for was something more passive, because I through the years I became a software engineer. I already had a full-time job, and I wasn't looking for another full-time job. You know what I mean? So I started looking at how to actually acquire some of the properties and some of the deals I was doing, but kind of quickly ran into the same problem as 7-year-old me. The properties are still very expensive, and even though my income had grown, I didn't see a way to scale from saving up enough money to buy one, say, duplex or a single family house to being able to own many of them. It just didn't seem like I couldn't see a path to get there. So I started looking at bringing in partners for properties, basically raising capital to invest in some larger residential properties. So, triplexes and four units. But even then, the spreads weren't really there, right? Like, once you bring on an investor, now you have somebody else to pay back, including the bank, and you need to have enough money to go around and to be able to make some money for yourself. And that just wasn't the case with those smaller properties. So I started looking at larger properties and 10 units, 20 units, and started looking at more commercial properties. And within that, found that I kind of liked the idea of helping other people invest in real estate and providing opportunities to others. And that's how I ended up starting our 24 Capital Group, which is a real estate private equity firm that basically has the sole job to provide access to real estate investing opportunities where people think they may not be able to.
Yeah, I love how you weave these two groups of people that you could help. On the one hand, people who don't have a lot of money, you can overcome that very quickly by realizing there are things like wholesaling. There are opportunities like that. And then you've got people like you on the other hand. And I, by the way, I came from the world of data science. So I was a pretty busy guy myself. And you can also help people who are very busy professionals through a different type of real estate investing known as passive investing. So I wish I could get everybody in the world to listen to this interview, because I know there's so many people out there who think either, hey, I can't get into real estate, I haven't got any money, or you know what, I'm just too busy, I just can't do this. In fact, as you joined the call, I was talking to somebody who said, when you don't have money, it forces you to get creative. He was actually telling me, George, that's sort of an advantage. I think it is, because, it really is a limiting belief, thinking that, hey, I can't get into investing because I don't have money. A lot of investing is like that. You're not going to invest in equities with no money. But if you're going to put in the sweat, real estate is a different matter.
Yeah, it definitely would need to be able to, think outside the box. I mean, and that was something unique about wholesaling, because an example of somebody who we were able to help, she was selling her house because her job had relocated her with very short notice, and she didn't really have the money to go move and put, the deposit and first and last security on a new place, a new apartment. But she said, hey, if I can sell my house, then I'd be able to afford all of these different moving expenses. And so we were able to help her to get creative, find a creative way to sell her house, keeping her existing mortgage in place. And we were able to actually complete that whole transaction in about 8 days, and help her pay to relocate. We had her stuff moved for her and everything. So it definitely helps to be creative when you're doing these transactions.
Yeah, I love it. And obviously, that's one of the places in real estate where you do build that creativity to a great degree. I think a lot of people see that maybe that's not the most important skill for multifamily or commercial real estate in general. I would disagree, because if you are willing to get creative, there's all kinds of things you can do. I just got involved in a transaction. I want to say that our down payment was about 13.5%, and we got 5 years interest only. So I'm telling you that those creative negotiating skills can be very, very advantageous. Do you have any stories about using those sorts of skills in the multifamily space?
I do. So this is actually a deal that didn't get done, but the seller, only because the seller had very specific uses for the funds that he needed immediately. So this was I believe a 17 unit here in Connecticut, 17 or 20, I can't remember, not too far from where I live now. And the purchase price for the property was, he wanted $800,000. The numbers really didn't work at $800,000. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, that property might still be for sale at the time of this recording. But I essentially made him an offer for the property where we would seller finance half of the property, and actually that seller finance portion would, instead of being paid to him in cash, he could actually become a partner in the deal with us and benefit from the upside of the deal. The seller was really impressed with the offer. He actually was pretty excited about it, and he had said he'd never received any offer like that before, and he would have accepted, except he needed the liquidity from the sale of the property for another venture that he was doing. So that those creative negotiating skills, to your point, really have come in handy in negotiations, and make your offers stand out. You know what I mean? Especially with the bull market we've been in real estate, right? Like, it's just it's been really, really aggressive, and you need to stand out. You need to stand out, and making a creative offer is a great way to do that.
All right, well, this may be an awesome time to merge into one of your other projects. So you are in multifamily, you have been a wholesaler. I understand that you've got 42 short-term rentals. So tell us about that, how that came about, and your plans.
Yeah, sure. So the way that came about is through networking. That's something I've really always believed in, and it's kind of why I chose to be on the private equity side of things, because as I'm sure you know, networking is so important when it comes to being able to raise equity for deals, and it really comes down to who you know. So through some of the networks that I'm in, one of the Facebook groups, actually, I met a gentleman, and he's really experienced in the short-term rental space, and he's partnered with some others who are also really experienced. They both have pretty sizable short-term rental portfolios in their own right, and they, presented me with this really, really cool opportunity. They're leveraging some great technology when it comes to actually sourcing and underwriting deals on the MLS really, really efficiently and really quickly. And so using that technology, we've been able to acquire properties for the portfolio for our fund, and it's been a really great process to see how we've been able to vertically integrate as well, bringing in designers, bringing in a cleaning staff, and really leveraging all these different relationships and all these different people to be able to have a really, really successful run with short-term rentals over the past 12 months.
Yeah, great niche, by the way. I love that. Maybe we could go back to the multifamily space. I know that we live in a time of rapidly rising interest rates, a lot of turmoil in the economy. We have inflation. All these things, I believe, should be impacting our plans and execution in some way or another. How have you been adapting to the new higher rate environment?
Yeah, great question. So it's actually, it's funny, I just was talking on LinkedIn about this, and moving into the short-term rental space is actually kind of a pivot based on that, right? So when you talk about debt, we all know commercial debt is one of the more expensive forms of debt out there. If you go to get a mortgage on a, whatever 50-unit building versus the mortgage on a house, the rates and the terms will probably be more favorable on that residential property. So building up the short-term rental portfolio, we've been able to use the best debt available for investments, for investment properties, because those are residential properties. And then on the other side, of course, looking at commercial properties, we're really relying on relationships that we have with past lenders, and also it's very, very important to be genuinely conservative when it comes to underwriting. I know everybody says that their deal is conservatively underwritten, right? Like you'll never walk up to someone and they'll say, no, we weren't conservative at all. But legitimately conservative, meaning build in these rate hikes into the underwriting. If you're planning to do a refinance, obviously you don't know where the terms will be, but you need to, don't be afraid to bump up your refi rate by 75 bips or even twice that, just because of the trajectory and where we know we're headed. So being legitimately conservative, and even obviously during the early underwriting process, you don't know how many months it's going to take you to lock your rate or how many months it's going to take you to get to the closing table, right? So you can't underwrite a deal at the current rate, right? That won't fly. You need to underwrite it at a higher rate, and of course, even after that, stress test that, right? What if you get in there and they're like, oh, nope, sorry, 50 bips higher. Does the deal still pencil? So those are just a couple of things we're trying to do to mitigate that.
Yeah, I love it. Every syndicator says that they underwrite conservatively. Every lender says they close the loans that other people can't. And every broker says, this is a great deal I got for you, right? But good stuff.
Biggest lies ever told, right?
Yeah, you mentioned having 42. So I would say, yes, I agree with you. You get some great terms with residential loans. It's certainly an advantage to have a residential loan when you can. But one of the disadvantages, and the number changes from time to time, it might be around 10 or 12 now, you get to that point and the agencies cut you off. They say no more. So you must own some of these either outright, or you've probably got some sort of a portfolio loan. What are you doing to finance?
Yeah. So we're using different portfolio loans, and we have some nice relationships with lenders as well. And also too, we do sell some of the properties in the portfolio, so it kind of keeps it in flux and make sure we have that availability for lending.
Awesome. And then what would be your niche within the short-term rental space? Are these like in destination locations? Are these like all done up? Like when I go to Orlando, every Airbnb's got Mickey Mouse ears and stuff like that. Or are you just trying to give people a good deal, a good bargain?
Yeah, really, really great question. So I'm going to give away some nuggets here for the listeners. Something that we found to be really, really effective, and this is all based on data, is being 2 to 3 hours from a major metro. So, and obviously you want to have a reason why people want to travel there, but it doesn't necessarily need to be something as big as Disneyland. It could just be a really nice lake and some really nice hiking trails, or, whatever sort of nature folks are into, skiing, for example. So the reason behind that is, one, your prices are going to be a little bit lower, right? So if you want to buy a property, say in Houston versus, a few towns over, say in Katy or something like that, your prices are going to be a little bit cheaper. And two, again, talking about the data and the travel patterns, since COVID, right, we've seen a shift. There was obviously a time when the ability to fly was pretty limited. It was kind of a headache. You had to, do all the paperwork and sign the documents and all this stuff just to be able to get on the flight to go to a different country. So with that, people still travel. They just started taking more road trips, right? Like, it's funny. My wife and I are an example of that. We just celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary, and this was just a few months ago. So we could have traveled where normally we would have. We would have gone, overseas or something like that to travel. Instead, we ended up renting a farmhouse 3 hours away in Pennsylvania and just hanging out there for the weekend and kind of relaxing under the stars. And it was interesting because after I did that, I realized, I was like, oh, wow, I am the target audience here. And so travel patterns have changed. And so being within driving distance, people are a lot more inclined to do that kind of traveling. And so that's been really popular. It gives you an opportunity to get a better deal on the property. And then as far as property types, we're looking for, larger homes, 3 beds at least. And yeah, the design is the key element. I mean, Airbnb has gotten very popular. Short-term rentals in general have gotten very popular. The fact of the matter is, though, most of them are just, single individual owner operators who are taking pictures on their iPhone, and they're buying the best furniture they can get at IKEA, and which is fine. That's a totally, perfect business model. But when we're able to come in with our design team that's, solely dedicated to designing our properties and making them look the best that they can in their locations, maybe even bringing in some features of the location to make it look like it belongs, like in the Poconos, for example. This house looks like it belongs in the Poconos, and it's designed beautifully. It really, really is something. And of course, with the professional pictures, there's no iPhone pictures. There are no, people in the camera with the flash in the bathroom taking photos of the bathroom. These are all really, really professional shots. And that's what's going to make us stand out.
Yeah, I like it. Beautiful the way you've defined your market, and it's something you enjoy. So obviously you're right front and center. You're reminding me of some of my better Airbnb stays. I stayed at one in Silver Lake and in Michigan, and really small area. We must have been at least 40 minutes from anything major. We were out, I want to say it was either a state or a national forest, and they had some firewood out for us, and they had videotapes from the 1980s and 90s. And there were also pictures of the family, and he called it something like Rachel's house. So the idea was that this was something special he did for his daughter. So it's interesting. Some of these more out of the way places, they can be great. I know I got some amazing deals. I went to Toledo, and I stayed about 30 minutes south of the city, totally out in the country. And again, yeah, you can get some really great deals if you're willing to be just a little outside the city. So great, I think great niche you got there. But now, what about the narrative? People have been moving more out towards the tertiary market since COVID. Who's to say that that's really going to continue? Do you believe that there's some legs to that? Or are we going to maybe see things come back and pendulum swings back, or we see some reversion to the mean?
Yeah, that's a really great question as well. So I actually do believe that there will be some reversion to the mean. I mean, if we look at the people who have the control at the end of the day, right? The CEOs, the people in these corporations who have the control seem, from what I've been hearing and individuals I talk to, seem to want people in the office, right? And for a long time, obviously, employees have had the control and have kind of yanked the steering wheel away from the corporations and have created this awesome environment where we're working from home, we're working from the beach or wherever. But I think kind of as the economic situation starts to change a little bit and the employers start to regain a little bit more leverage, places with industry will be the ones that end up being, the safe haven. So you think about any place that has, again, major industry. You think about kind of Boston area, right, where there are always companies there. There's always tech there. Charlotte right now is having a huge boom in growth in industry down in the Carolinas. So places around there will continue to do well. And I think it's going to be interesting kind of to see how things play out, right? Obviously, nobody has a crystal ball, but we have seen really high appreciation in places where the industry hasn't necessarily kept up, right? They haven't necessarily had an organic economic growth in some of these markets. However, on the real estate side, things have really appreciated because the rising tide lifts all ships. So as time goes on, we'll kind of start to see how that plays out in places where the industry hasn't grown, but the prices have. And I do think that those will be the places that we'll see kind of the greatest dip in value as time goes on.
Great, Hollis. Now I want to get a little bit back to mindset, because I know you had a lot of things you wanted to talk about and things that you commonly talk about, things like you talked about limiting beliefs, thinking bigger. You went from wholesaling to something more like short-term rentals and multifamily. Let's see. I don't know if you talked about having a why yet. Anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, for sure. So one, when talking about thinking bigger and kind of allowing yourself to grow, right? I'll tell you a funny story. When I was a kid, there was the 50-cent candy, right? You're talking about Snickers bars, Twix bars, Reese's. And then I don't know if you've ever heard of the chocolates or truffles, Ferrero Rochers, right? You get like 3 of them in a pack. This candy was 75 cents. Delicious, like hazelnut truffle, phenomenal. When I was a kid, my dad would take us to the corner store, and me, my brother, my sister, we could get any 50-cent candy we wanted, right? Anything we wanted. But Ferrero Rochers were preserved for my mom. That was a special treat for her because they were 75 cents. It's a notch above, right? I kid you not. I didn't buy a Ferrero Rocher until I was in my early 20s.
Oh,
I would
awesome.
walk by them in the store all the time, and I would see them, and I would just get a Snickers bar because in my mind, Ferrero Rocher is out of my reach. I can't do it. It's not for me. And I think that's an excellent, I tell people that story because it's an excellent kind of object lesson in what a limiting belief is, right? Like we grow up with these ideas maybe about ourselves, about our communities, about our backgrounds, and about what is attainable and what is impossible and what cannot be attained. When in reality, I could have bought a Ferrero Rocher when I was 12 if I wanted to. There's like 75 cents on the couch probably, you know what I mean? But I just didn't believe that I could. So much of it when it comes to removing limiting beliefs is really thinking about a goal, right? Like legitimately think about it. And maybe there are things that aren't attainable. Like I don't think I'll be president ever, but can I own some commercial multifamily property? Probably.
I love it. I think that's a great analogy there because look, what I like about real estate is it's easy to become a millionaire, not easy to become a billionaire, right? You got to go found a company for that. And, but I think it's really that sort of sweet spot where you can get to the levels of wealth where you can live a really great life and where having 10 or 100 times as much really doesn't change things a whole lot.
Yeah, for sure. You could, you can definitely, there's that plateau, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, well, I have 100 million. The guy's like, well, I have 200 million.
Right.
Okay.
What are you going to do? You're going to get more palm trees in the atrium and maybe some Siberian tigers. But yeah, I love it. Yeah, I have to say, I was laughing a little earlier. You talked about people working from different places. I remember spending almost a week working from my sailboat. That was fun. I got to an island and I was docked out there. I worked pretty hard, and we had our stand-ups. I know you're an engineer, so I'm sure you're very familiar with Scrum and all those.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes. Well, anyway, so yeah, he said, "Oh gosh, it looks like you're on your sailboat today." I said, "Let me put up a background."
Man, I tell you, I've definitely taken some scum calls from Jamaica, I will say.
Good stuff. Good
So,
stuff. Well, let's see. Early on, now you mentioned coming from New York City. What do you think about rent control? I imagine you might have some strong views on that. You have some serious rent control. You also have some serious housing shortage in New York.
yeah, wow. So that's a really great question. I was reading an article about this the other day, and I think it laid it out pretty well. Where at the end of the day, the greatest form of rent control is to have more properties available, right? Like it's basic supply and demand, right? You you don't need to control the prices of anything. If you can produce enough of it, then you can outpace the demand, and the price will naturally go down. I think it's an interesting thing because being someone who grew up without a lot of money, I mean, rent was definitely our biggest expense. Like we did not always have all the money to pay Mr. Carter. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So I can definitely understand why people would want kind of a hedge against their rent prices going through the roof, you know, because I've been on that side where even though the rent was cheap or cheaper than maybe the neighbors, it was still too much for our family. You know what I mean? So I can totally get that. But I also think that property owners, kind of probably like 7-year-old me, I thought Mr. Carter was the richest man on the planet. Like I didn't think anybody had more money than him. But of course, he owned these properties, but he had to pay a mortgage, right? He was paying property tax. Whatever the property tax decide to go up 15% in a year, his costs to own the home went up 15% in that year, right? If labor charges went up by $5 an hour, well, the next time we called him to fix the broken toilet, he's also paying more money. So it's interesting when you're not necessarily in the real estate industry, it's easy to point the finger and say, oh, wow, you're just greedy. You want more. You want to charge more because you can get more. When in reality, oftentimes, I mean, and I'm sure you know, things do legitimately cost more money. Like when you say a rising tide lifts all ships, when the cost goes up, the landlord is also on the boat, and his costs are floating right up there along with you. So I think a part of that is not painting property owners in an unrealistic light. It's not like, you know, just because you own property, you're made of money and therefore can just afford to give away your income stream, which is the property. But also from the without getting too political, but from the lawmaking standpoint, understanding that allowing builders to build and understanding that the more strict your zoning restrictions, the more difficult you make it for builders to build property, you're having an adverse effect on your ability to create affordable housing.
Yeah, great. And I think very sensitive analysis. We have to remember, I think, that these things like rent control, they tend to come about at the time of maximum pain, which is when it's going to cause the maximum damage, right? We still haven't enticed enough people to come into the building industry. I know I entered 6 years ago, and my sister and I were just still gaining steam. So it's going to take a long time, and people don't really realize, or as they say in commodities, the cure for high prices is high prices. It's tough medicine, but in the end, it is. I mean, you know, you can't just order people. This is not Soviet USSR. You can't just order people. You're going to build houses, right? And, you know, they would build too many, right? Not that we don't have problems with oversupply or getting greedy in our culture, but I mean, yeah, then you have the opposite problem. But beautiful. And then there's the mindset issue, right? A lot of people say, yeah, well, you know, hey, business is easy. You could just raise your prices. I just wish that I could, you know, get in the room with these people, look them in the eye and say, well, if that's easy, if it's that easy to be in business, just raise prices and you raise your profits. Why aren't you in business? And then they always cite something like, well, there's too much red tape and I don't want to deal with the accounting. It's like, well, see, now that's what I've been trying to tell you.
That's right. But you know, it's funny. Dan Fredenberg, he always says, show people how hard it is, right? People, when you show someone how hard something is, they become much more willing to pay you for it.
That is interesting. Certainly, I think a lot of people start out in this business doing everything, including wielding the hammer. And then before you know it, they realize, hey, my time is valuable. And so what I tell people is, look, I like to be the deal maker. Okay. I got pretty good with a hammer. Okay. I've done a lot of remodeling on my own house, and I don't begrudge the time I spent. But getting that realization, wow, my time is very valuable. Whatever you're doing, whether you're a software engineer or something else, your time has value, and coming to that realization, that is a major game changer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's see. I tried to throw a couple curveballs, but I got to say you're really good, Hollis. You're catching everything, the rent control and all of that. But you know what? I think that we probably do need to start to wrap up pretty soon. So what I want to do is let's head into the lightning round. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right, awesome. Tell us something about one of your real estate markets that most people would know.
Well, I gave you the tertiary market nugget for short-term rentals. I would say one more nugget I'll give you: look into legislation before you buy your short-term rentals. Look for places that either have legislation already around it or depend on short-term rental income for their local economy to avoid future problems.
I love it. Now here, wait, can we go on a tangent for a second? What would be one of those areas that is depending on short-term rental as opposed to hotel or some other hospitality?
Yeah, for sure. So the Poconos is a great example of that. That's a place that's had short-term rentals since, but way, way, way before they were cool, right? And they depend on that economy to help bring people in, because you're talking about a place where people, you don't want to go there and stay in a hotel. You want to be able to be out in nature a little bit, have a little bit more independence. It's a great family and romantic vacation destination. So they depend on short-term rentals to provide those kind of services. And that's a place that will likely never legislate against short-term rentals in any way.
I love it. So, okay, we bring out of the lightning round for a second. I got to say, this is beautiful because, it's a great reminder that's what's new is old. And there always have been places like that where you can, rent a beach house for a little while. It just wasn't so easy. Now technology, it turns a house into a hotel. It turns your car into a cab. Everything. It has commercial possibilities that yesterday had only personal or residential value. So yeah, great insights.
Yeah, and to add to that too, understand institutional money, as in institutional hospitality, wants to enter the short-term rental space.
Yes.
They just don't want to build it. Right? They don't want to go out there and find deals on properties and rehab, and that's not what they do. They're in the hospitality industry. So there's still plenty of money to be made in the short-term rental market. I'll put it that way.
All right. Here, okay, we'll go a little longer on this wavelength. Two tech guys talking about real estate. What I heard recently is, or let me take 2 steps back. Warren Buffett, many years ago, he said, if there was a way to buy thousands of single-family homes at the same time, or maybe it was hundreds, that's what I would do. Then you see institutional players getting into the game, and they're doing this. And you see things like build to rent. You see a lot of people who are doing short-term rentals on a grander scale. Things are growing. Well, here's something. I went to a single-family meetup very recently, and the guy at the front, he said, listen, there's no advantage to multifamily. With technology, if you're doing it right, you're getting the same thing. And, you can buy from sellers that are not as nuanced, etc. I mean, you're not buying from sophisticated people. You can get great deals. I thought, he's got a lot of great points. But you know what? I want to say that it was the same day or that same week. Was it BlackRock came out and said that they were having these incredible economies of scale. And, they're out there, they're buying houses, they're investing in build to rent and all these other things. But I think, maybe that's the wave of the future. I mean, we do have these incredible economies of scale with multifamily and with commercial real estate in general, with building, etc. But it's interesting that technology levels the playing field in ways we would have never imagined. You no longer need one of those very expensive cab licenses just to take somebody from point A to point B. Who knows what's going to happen next? But I just thought I'd throw that your way. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's really interesting because being a tech person, anytime I look at anything, I'm looking for ways to leverage technology there and to automate different processes and things like that. So, and in real estate, technology has grown significantly, but I think there's still a lot more room to grow. There's some really interesting kind of proprietary black box technologies out there, but as far as something a little bit more mainstream with broader access, I think we do have a little bit of a ways to go for that technology to come up, to catch up, which it always does eventually, right? Everything starts in a bubble and then kind of grows out from there. But I will say an interesting thing too, when it comes to economies of scale in single family versus multifamily, is like there's also the risk factor when you're talking about your leverage, right? In a single family house, we all know if you don't have a tenant, you're at 0% vacancy, meaning you have no income against your debt on that property, right? Versus on a multifamily property, you have 100 units. Even if you have only 90% vacancy, at least you have 90% of your income against your debt, right? So that's one thing that kind of and this is kind of with short-term rentals in mind, until we change the way that debt is structured to make it a little bit more income dependent, kind of the way that multifamily properties are. I think that multifamily is still slightly, depending on your risk tolerance or how you look at it, but I think multifamily is still a less risky investment because you have the economy of scale against your debt on the property.
Yeah, I love it. It's one of my main reasons for investing in multifamily. I just put $70,000 into a joint venture, 1/3 partner, and we took down a 24-unit apartment. Why would I want to put in $70,000 or $200,000 into a single family home, or even two? Because I'm probably not going to leverage it efficiently. It's difficult to leverage that efficiently. So I would say, yeah, perfect. Yeah, listen up, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, Hollis is going to get you 2 steps ahead. All right. What is some advice you would give your younger self?
Don't be afraid. That sounds really basic, but a lot of fear is one of the biggest drivers or motivators behind human action. We do so many things because we're afraid of what will happen, and even more depending on how you grew up and some of the values that were instilled or weren't instilled in you. Don't be afraid. Just take the leap, take action, and continue to grow.
I love it. So, all right, could I ask you to take that one step further? So if you're not going to be driven by fear, then what do you put in its place?
Greatness.
Love it. Bingo. All right, that's going to be one of our pull quotes, I'm sure. What is the best real estate advice you have ever received?
This is a really, really good question. I would say don't time the market. So if you're my age, I'm 30 now, 32. 2008, I wasn't old enough to, to invest in anything. But I do remember the whole crash cycle and everything that went through that. And now being in my 30s and talking to the older investors, the kind of the OGs, if you will, they're all like, "Oh yeah, man, I picked up all these properties, half priced, 2009. I bought up all the pre-foreclosure, I got it all." And now, they've all in this cycle gotten rid of those properties for 3-4x, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've got so much equity, and it was all because I bought at the right time." You got to wait. And if you the man watching the clouds never sows seed, you know what I mean? That's a proverb from the Bible, and it's true. If you are sitting around waiting for perfect conditions, you won't take action. So in real estate, obviously you want to be savvy and you want to take advantage and look for opportunity, but don't wait for the opportunities because you could be waiting forever.
Beautiful. Now, real estate is also a place where there's a lot of bad advice. So what's some of the worst advice you've seen going around?
So I won't say that this is advice. Oh yeah, I've heard people used to tell me, you can get into real estate with no money. You don't need any money, right? Even if you look on YouTube or if you look for, enough of these seminars, you'll see a whole lot of people talking about buy real estate with no money. I flipped this house with zero money out of my own pocket. I'm telling you right now, that is a lie. Okay, it's not true. You paid some money out of pocket at some point, believe it or not.
Love it. Beautiful. I used to have my Carlton sheets. I'd hold that up when people. He's great. I'm not putting him down, but you get the idea. Yeah, there's a lot of gurus out there that say, you can do it with no money down. All right, awesome. So let's take a nod to the randomness of the universe. I got my question cards here. Tell me when to stop cutting. And this is going to be something from left field. If you think my questions have been from left field today.
Oh man, here comes that fear. Stop.
All right. Top card. If you knew you wouldn't get hurt. Oh shoot, we asked this one on the air before, but never mind. We'll do it again. It's the second time in history. If you knew you wouldn't get hurt, would you rather skydive or view sharks from an underwater cage?
I'm gonna have to say view sharks. I love animals, and most of the ones I like most are incredibly dangerous. So,
like Siberian tigers, was that right?
Yeah, so I love big cats, man. I love big cats, tigers, lions. In fact, there was a cougar in my backyard not too long ago. So that was thrilling and terrifying.
And I'm sorry, now this is not your home in Connecticut, I would imagine.
It is my home in Connecticut.
Oh,
so another real estate lie. The Connecticut state government says that there are no cougars, but there are.
Nice. All right, I love it. You're killing me, man. Name a book that's helped to forge you as a leader or as an entrepreneur, and why?
Oh wow. Okay, so I'll pull out one here on the spot. I got a little rip in it, but that's okay. This one right here, Who Not How. Totally recommended for anyone, because it's one of those things that helps you remove limiting beliefs. And then 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
One of my
book
perennial favorites.
Game changer.
All right, how has a failure or misstep set you up for later success?
Well, so personally, my personal belief is that you never really fail at anything unless you give up and totally stop, right? So any kind of intermittent failures are just a part of the learning process to me. So I was just talking about this with someone the other day. Something that I can't, as a person, my soul can't bear to quit. I have to keep going. It actually disturbs me almost physically to quit something. And that's been to my own detriment many times. There are things I should have stopped doing a long time ago and just gotten some help or hired somebody else, but I kept going right ahead because I couldn't quit, right? So I'll use that as the example. That could be viewed as a failure in that it's helped me to understand that sometimes you do need to quit. Sometimes you need to stop. You're headed down the wrong path and all signs are pointing to it, and it's just stubborn to keep going. So some of my missteps have taught me that, hey, sometimes you do got to hang it up and pivot.
Well, I believe the number one habit of highly successful people has got to be determination. I'm sure you have expressed that in many ways, becoming a software engineer and an entrepreneur. But yeah, I love it. Some of us who do have that habit of determination, I'm with you. I know it can be rough. All right, now before I ask you for a quote, I'll give you one because, right as we were doing the pre-show, you had mentioned something about thinking bigger. And this is one that really hit me. I invest in the City Beautiful Orlando, and you may be aware of the City Beautiful movement. That came from Daniel Burnham. He did a lot of work in Chicago, Cleveland, and DC. He said, make no small plans. They have no power to stir men's souls. So I just wanted to say, before I ask you for a quote, I thought I'd give you a moment or two to think. Give us a quote to help forge our listeners as leaders and entrepreneurs.
So this quote comes from Martin Hollis by way of John Hollis. So my grandfather told it to my father, and my father drilled it into me and my brother and my sister. Reach for the stars and grab the moon.
Love it. Hollis, I want to say that this has been absolute solid gold. I love this interview. Total professional, true camera ready kind of guy. And I just want to make sure that before we cut out, that our listeners know how to reach you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. That's probably where George and I connected for the first time. So you can find me under LinkedIn, William Hollis. Hopefully I'm the only one. Hopefully I'm the top search result. And then our website, 24capitalgroup.com. You can go there and you can find more info. And also, if you go to link.24capitalgroup/ the Foundry, I have a special thing I'm doing for George and his listeners, where I'm helping to donate $5 to the charity of your choice. So if you go to that link.24capitalgroup.com/ Foundry, and we'll have a link for that in the show notes. You'll be taken to a quick little survey, and then you'll get a gift card to give to $5 to the charity of your choice.
Outstanding. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for coming on the show today and sharing your knowledge experience.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.